All right, welcome back to my channel. Again, my name's Woodchuck Knight. We've been doing a series on the different types of fighting in armored combat, Bohurt, steel fighting, whatever you're going to call it. We've already done the videos on duels, melees, and this one's going to be on the night fight / pro fight and kind of what that is. I'll start with a very general explanation. As you can see, I'm actually inside today. I'm sitting at my wife's desk with beautiful mandala behind it. Partly that's because I wanted to write down my thoughts and the difference between the different types of pro fights and night fights, and they're a little more complex. So I actually have a sheet in front of me on my of information here, so I make sure I cover it all. But in general, when we talked about, the melee is a team fight, the objective is to knock down the other opponents, the other team, and once they're all down, you win the round. Pretty simple, conceptually. Duels, again, very simple in concept. It's weapon strikes, it's points, and the more points you get, you win based on the more weapon strikes. The night fight pro fight is probably the more complex of the fights to watch. I think it's one of the more thrilling ones, more fun to watch than a duel in my opinion. But it's harder to see who's winning. And it also depends on which league you're in. There are dramatic differences in scoring between the leagues here. And I'll do my best to explain them based on my understanding and me reading the rules. Same caveat as always. Make sure if you're in a fight or if you're watching one, try to read the rules for the league you're watching. There are some differences here. I'm sorry I'm a little stuffy today, so I'm trying not to sniffle too much, but this is the way I am. So, let's talk about what a pro fight / night fight is. Now, I'm using that term pro fight, night fight because they're called different things in different leagues, and they are different fights, but they kind of fit in the same genre. And basically, it's a one-on-one fight in rounds where you are trying to overwhelm your opponent using all different types of strikes. So weapon strikes, punches, elbows, kicks, throws, all of it is part of the scoring. The HMB League and WMFC, I think, WMFC, yep, League, they're the most similar together in what they'll call pro fight. And then the Armored Combat Sports ACS League has what they have their termed a night fight. And talking about the differences of those a little bit, the pro fight scores a little bit more like a duel, from my understanding of it, from looking at it, where you're gaining actual points for strikes. Punches, kicks, all different types of strikes will get you points. And those points are totaled to help determine a winner for the round. Armored Combat, little bit different in that it's judged on who's essentially dominating the fight. You're not scored points, but you're ranked in different categories, and in those categories determine how you score the round. And we'll get into the exact details in a minute. So that's the idea, right? It's a fight which is, and if I have to describe it as anything, it's the closest you'll see to medieval MMA, right? Armored MMA, where like MMA, it's not like karate sparring where certain, kicks are allowed and certain contact isn't. Pretty much all of the legal moves that you can use in a melee are part of a night fight. You can do essentially everything from a striking perspective, and you will get points or you will gain an advantage in the scoring on that. This is the most challenging type of fight, I think, as far as a one-on-one. It's going to drain you more because you're going to do with grapples, you throws, you have to watch more than just the weapon. Shield punches are legal to the face in all leagues, so you get a lot more contact. This is the more thrilling one to watch, and you'll see this sometimes if you're just looking online and you see Armored Combat, and you see guys fighting. Sometimes you'll see them in almost a boxing ring. That's the WMFC league, where it looks more like a cage match, I should say, like an MMA cage, and it has that similar feel to an MMA fight. So let's talk about the differences between the two of them. So the ACS night fight, it's a 5-round fight. They actually break into classes. There's class A, B, and C. The class A being the highest, so each round's 120 seconds, B's 90-second rounds, C's 60-second rounds. So if you're fighting in a C class, you'd fight 5 60-second rounds. In an A class, 5 120-second rounds. The HMB Pro fight is 2 rounds of 90 seconds each. So you're fighting a two-round fight. And the WMFC Pro fight, I believe, I didn't write this down, but I believe that is 3 rounds at 2 minutes each. So that one's a little more intense than the HMB fight, because that's only a 2-round fight at 90 seconds. The other major differences between the leagues I find is the weight limits, the structure. Both HMB and WMFC, the two that fall, they're pretty similar in most of their rules here. They have much tighter weight classes. So the lightweight is 100 up to 165 pounds. Average weight is 165 to 187. Heavyweight 187 to 209. And anyone over 209 is super heavyweight. Personally, I don't like that. I think there should be a better mix of ranges there. That's a real large number of anyone over 209. I don't know why that's set up like that, but that's just the way it is. An ACS night fight, which again, I'm fight mainly in the ACS league. That's the league of New England we're at. It's where most of us are fighting. The Knights Hall fights out of that. So, that's my favorite style. I'm going to always be a little biased that way. I try to talk about the benefits of the other leagues when I see them. But here, I definitely think ACS has it figured out. So their flyweight is 161 or less. 161 to 181 is lightweight. Middleweight is 181 to 201. Light heavyweight, 201 to 221. Heavyweight, 221 to 261. And anyone over 261 is titan weight. Why do I think that's important? Because I think that I'm like 250 something, right? Is what I weigh in at. I think me fighting a 209 fighter is generally a disadvantage to that fighter. If I was in this super heavy, that super heavyweight is 209. I just don't see that as a super heavyweight class. So I fight generally in ACS. I'd be in the heavyweight class. I could, if I wasn't training, I could be in titan weight. And I know you got to put a cap on it somewhere, but that range of 221 to 261, I think that they don't have in the HMB league, I think gives more ability to have more matched sizes and weights. And again, I've seen fights where lighter fighters beat heavier fighters all the time, but all things considered, I like that you can spread those classes out a little more. You don't get anyone from 209 to 400 pounds being in the same range. I just think that's done a little bit better. In weapons, so pretty much all legal weapons are available. Anything in your league that you could use for a melee. I won't go into the WMFC and HMB quality specifications. They have much tighter specifications for their weapons, you can find that online. The ACS, the IMCF rules, we have our own specs, but you can use a wider range of weights, I'd say, in these fights. But generally, you're going to be wanting to use a relatively light weapon, a lighter, faster weapon, because you want to get more strikes in, you want to get more hits. It's still going to be judged on who's dominating that round. So if you're throwing 10 or 15 shots to my one, you probably got the advantage there. So you can use a shield, a sword, an axe, a two-handed axe. You can use a halberd. Generally speaking, in my experience, what I've seen in all of the fights I've seen online, that are at a higher level, people are fighting with shield and either falchion or arming sword. I think that's just the accepted combination for the best strategy, for best defense and offense, and they'll do more things. Now, I've seen more in the night fight, more matched weapons, because people will agree to fight with different weapons for that one. And that, again, equals inequality. It's not an open fight where you come in with whatever you want. In the ACS, at Class C, you can only use sword and shield. So you got to advance up classes to have more opportunities, but eventually you could fight with whatever weapon you want. I just haven't seen a lot of people. I've never seen a pro fight where one guy has a sword and shield, the other guy comes with a polearm. I just haven't seen it. It seems to be that the preferred weapons are going to be that sword and shield variation. So same rules in general for most melees for what's prohibited. So there's no thrusting strikes. You can't stab. And no joint locks, no chokeholds. There's no submission in any of this. A lot of that has to do with safety. If you're chokeholding someone in their armor, you can't see it in the same way with MMA. Joint locks are exceptionally dangerous. So we don't allow any of that. It's striking, punching, kicks, throws, grapples, things like that. Here's the one big difference you see between night fights and the HMB and pro fight, the WMFC pro fight. I've got a ton of acronyms. Is that armored combat sports night fights do not allow any ground fighting. In the other leagues, if you throw an opponent to the ground, you can strike him on the ground for 10 seconds, up to 10 seconds. Then the ref will separate it and let the other fighter stand up and continue, and you gain points. The points while you're hitting those strikes count. So that's, that is a very big difference. You'll see ground fighting in the other one. You'll see none of that in Armored Combat Sports. In ACS, not in a night fight, if you knock your opponent down, he has to get back. He or she has to get back up, and they have a 10-second count to do that. So it's kind of like boxing. You knock them down, you step back, and you let them get up. I don't actually know which is better. I see advantages to both. I think that unlike like a true MMA fight, when you're on the ground, that person on the ground's almost always at a full disadvantage. The person's just getting free strikes. So I don't like that. Doesn't feel as dynamic. But I also do like the fact that if you toss somebody, you now get to hit them because you've done the work and you should be able to get the reward. So I kind of see both sides. I actually like that the leagues do different things and you could fight in different events and have a different experience. Scoring. So I think this is the most confusing part of either of the pro fight, night fight, whatever you're calling them, events here. I'm going to go with the HMB and the WMFC rules first. So basically, again, I said it's closer to a duel in that you're getting points, actual points for each strike, whether a sword strike or a punch or a kick or whatever it may be. And so you got side judges judging it and giving you points, and they're called AP points. I don't know if they're action points, but AP points. Throughout the round, you score 1 point for weapon strikes, shield punches, etc. You get 3 points for a throw. And interestingly, you get 2 points for a two-handed weapon strike versus 1 point. So there is an advantage to using a longer or a pole arm or a two-handed axe, and that each strike would cost 2 points, but it's a slower weapon. And like I said in my experience, I think that the benefits of the sword and shield outweigh the axe in the sport, even though you would get extra points. So you get those action points, right? So if I got 10 action APs and my opponent got 8 APs, at the end of the round, you go to the like a head judge called Secretary of Competitions, who totals the scores up and then gives victory points for the round. So if there's a slight advantage in scoring, 20 to 50% or less, the winning fighter gets 5 VPs, the loser gets 4. If there's 50% or more, the winner gets 5 and the loser gets 3. If there's less than 20% difference, both fighters get 5 victory points a round, right? So it's basically you're getting incidental points throughout the fight. You're totaling that up. So if it's 40 versus 20, you bring that to the head judge. They look at the spread, and with the spread, they say for the round, your total points are 5 to 3 or 5 to 4 or whatever it may be. And you carry those points through the fight. So if I won, if I fought a 3-round pro fight and I won all 3 rounds, I would get 5 points for each one. My opponent could get 4 points or 3 points, depending how far that spread was. So you total them to total up, I'd have 15 to their 13, and I would win the fight. That's the scoring for it. So you're basically getting these individual points that get totaled, and then they're broken into like an overall victory point for the round. You can also win by knockout or the opponent giving up. That's also happens. But if you're scoring it, that's the way the scoring works. That's cool. I like it. It's simple, right? And there's more ways. There's more breakdown of what gives you how many points. But I didn't go like certain strikes on the ground I think give 2 points. But I'm not going to the specific details too much. Just that's the general concept. When you're watching it, you're seeing that the person who's throwing the most strikes, landing the most hits, is going to win the fight. And then it's scored that way. I like it. It does feel reminiscent a little bit more of a duel approach. The night fight's a little bit different. It's a 10-point must system. So you start the round and the judges must give you 10 points to start. You start with 10. And then you lose points based off of how you perform. So, yeah, it's a little bit different. You're scored in that one, not in the sense of number of points. You're not getting APs or action points. But the judge is looking at who dominated each category. And the categories are given more weight. So the person with more weapon strikes, then strikes without the weapon, and then ring control. So do you position the person? Do you dominate the ring? Aggression, and then defense, right? So all 5 of those categories, with the weapon strikes being weighted the heaviest, and the judge is making a decision based off of how the round went. It's a little more feel than score, And again, I see the benefits of both. I personally like this format for night fights a lot because I already have the very point-based one in duels, and this feels very different. So you can you could win a round by landing less strikes in ACS. But if all of your strikes were really vicious and you shoved that person around and you kept him in the corner, and if they got more kind of hits, but you'd clearly dominate it, you would win that round, right? So, and the round would be broken up the same way. So you start with 10 points. The winner gets 10, the loser of the round gets 9. So you'd lose a point if you lost the round. And if you dominate them, it could be 10-8. So with 3 judges, you could the round might be 30 points to 27 if one person, if all 3 judges agreed that one person won, by a decent amount but not dominating. So that allows a little more of those 3 judges to have an opinion on how they saw the fight and how they had felt. And I just like it. I think it adds a little more drama to it, a little more nuance. But I understand that the HMB reason, or the WMFC reason for their points too. I think they both work. They're, again, just different styles. You might be asking why I'm combining these two, pro fights and night fights. It's because thematically they look the same. When you see these fights from the outside, these are the fights that look like the most contact as far as one-on-one, that look I don't want to say less finesse, there's lots of finesse, but you're using all of the tools of your arsenal, using all your weapons, every part of you to throw shots. So they look the same, they're just scored slightly differently. In the ACS fight, so again, you can win through a knockout. And you can also win, it's a 5-round fight, but if you win the first 3 rounds in a row, it's a TKO, they call the fight. So I could have a 5-round fight against someone, and if the other opponent's just significantly better and he wins 3 in a row, they call it and say, okay, this person's won this fight, you don't fight the last 2 rounds. So that's basically the how a night fight or a pro fight works. Now again, you'll see variations of this if you've watched any of the Knights Hall videos. We've done night fight tournaments. So, everyone fought C-class. Like, didn't matter how good you were, because you fought 3 1-minute rounds, and then if you won, you went on to the next round. So we've seen that before. We've seen lots of variations of this. You'll see people agree to a fight. They'll use, they could use different weapons or different times, challenge fights, things like that. But this is the concept of what the MMA style of armored combat. I hate using that, but it's the best analogy we have for other sports, where you have that freedom to do whatever you want, and you get credit for everything. So, if I duel someone and I throw a shield punch to the body, which is legal, as long as it's not to the head, I can do that to push my opponent back or to gain an advantage, but I'm only going to get the point for when that weapon strike lands. Here, I can throw shield punches all day, and if I land a lot of them, if I land them, I'm going to get credit, either points or judge is going to give me an advantage in that striking without a weapon category. And I think that when you watch these fights, whether you've got really good fighters against you, these are the most dynamic to watch because there's movement all around. There's all different techniques used. You're going to be throws and trips and everything involved. As far as grappling, both of these have rules around how grappling works. Generally speaking, they're phrased differently, but the pro fight style is you can only have a clinch for 3 seconds. So if it's not an active throw, ACS says it has to be an active grapple. So if both fighters are attempting throws and moving, it can continue. But if you're just hugging and staying on each other, the ref will break you up. It equates the same thing. You're looking at about 3 seconds of actual grappling before the ref will break it and say, keep fighting. Again, similar to boxing, right? You can clinch in that for boxing for a minute, but you can't hug and stay there. If you have questions, you want to learn more, you have thoughts about these different styles, I'd love to hear comments. Like, subscribe, follow, all that great stuff. We're going to do one more video on this, and these are going to be a video on chapter matches. And I may talk about what a warlord fight is too. These are some alternative styles that aren't as universal, but I think are really valuable and fun to watch. If you have any other ideas, you want other videos, suggestions, things you want clarification on, let me know in the comments or like, subscribe, and find me on Facebook.